Good morning everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the learning. So first of all we will study what do you mean by learning. It is the most important human capacity. It allows us to create effective lives by being able to respond to changes, and we learn to avoid touching the hot stove to find our way home from school, and to remember from people have helped us in the past and which people have been unkind. So without this ability to learn from our past experiences, our life would be remarkably dangerous and inefficient. The study of learning is closely associated with the behaviorist school of psychology. The behaviorists, including the John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner, focus their research entirely on behavior. For behaviorists, the fundamental aspect of learning is the process of conditioning. Conditioning means the ability to connect the stimuli, the change that occurs in the environment with responses, behavior, or other actions. So there are two types of learning, including learning through insight as well as observational learning. Classical conditioning was given by the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov. He was studying the digestive system of dogs, and he noticed an interesting behavioral phenomena. The dog began to salivate when a lab technician who normally fed them entered the room, even though the dogs had not yet received the food. So Pavlov realized that the dogs were salivating because they knew that they were about to be fed. The dogs had begun to associate the arrival of technicians with the food that soon followed the appearances in the room. Pavlov began studying this process in more detail. So initially, the dogs salivated only when they saw or smelled the food, but after several pairing of the sounds and the food, the dogs began to salivate as soon as they heard of the sound. So Pavlov has identified a fundamental associative learning process called the classical conditioning. Classical conditioning refers to learning that occurs when a neutral stimulus, for example a tone, become associated with a stimulus, that is food, that naturally produce a behavior. After the association is learned, the previously neutral stimulus is sufficient to produce the behavior. So before conditioning, the unconditioned stimulus, which was food, and the bell was the neutral stimulus on which the dog didn't respond. So during conditioning, unconditioned response, that is salivating, was produced by the dog, and after conditioning, only while ringing the bell, the unconditioned response, that is salivation, was produced, which was then called conditioned response. So the unconditioned stimulus is something such as food that triggers the natural occurring response, and the unconditioned response is the naturally occurring response such as salivation that follows the unconditioned stimulus. The conditioned stimulus is a neutral stimulus that, after being repeatedly presented prior to the conditioned stimulus, evoke a similar response as conditioned stimulus. In Pavlov experiment, the sound of the tone served as the conditioned stimulus that, after learning, produced the conditioned response, which is the acquired response to the formerly neutral stimulus. Conditioning is evolutionary beneficial because it allows organisms to develop expectations that help them prepare for both good and bad events. For instance, that an animal first smell a new food, eat it, and then get sick. If the animal can learn to associate the smell with the food, then it will quickly learn that the food create the negative outcome and not eat it in the next time. The persistence of extension of conditioning. After the initial acquisition learning phase in which the conditioning occurred, when the conditioned stimulus was then presented alone, the behavior rapidly decreases. The dog salivated less and less to the sound, and eventually the sound did not elicit salivation at all. Extension refers to the reduction in responding that occurs when the conditioned stimulus is presented repeatedly without the conditioned stimulus. Although at the end of the first extension period the CS was no longer producing salivation, the effects of conditioning had not entirely disappeared. Pavlov found that after a pause, sounding of tone again elicited salivation, although to a lesser extent than before extension took place. The increase is in responding to the CS following a pause after extinction is known as spontaneous recovery. When Pavlov again presented the CS alone, the behavior again showed extinction until it disappeared again. Pavlov also experimented with presenting new stimuli that were similar but not identical to the original conditioned stimulus. For instance, if the dog had been conditioned to a new scratched before the food arrived, the stimulus would be changed to being rubbed rather than scratched. He found that the dogs also salivated upon experiencing the similar stimulus, a process known as generalization. Generalization refers to the tendency to respond to stimuli that resemble the original conditioned stimulus. The ability to generalize has important evolutionary significance. If we eat some red berries and they make us sick, it would be a good idea to think twice before we eat some purple berries. Although the berries are not exactly the same, they nevertheless are similar and may have the same negative properties. The flip side of generalization is discrimination, the tendency to respond differently to different stimuli that are similar but not identical. Pavlov's dog quickly learned, for example, to salivate when they learn that the specific tone that had preceded food, but not upon hearing similar tones that had never been associated with the food. Discrimination is also useful if we do try the purple berries, and if they do not make us sick, we will be able to make the distinction in the future. In some cases, an existing conditioned stimulus can serve as an unconditioned stimulus for a pairing with a new conditioned stimulus, a process known as second order conditioning. In one of Pavlov's studies, for instance, he first conditioned the dog to salivate to a sound and then repeatedly paired a new conditioned stimulus, a black square, with the sound. Eventually, he found that the dog would salivate at the sight of the black square alone, even if it had never been directly associated with the food. For example, clinical psychologist makes a use of classical conditioning to explain the learning of a phobia, a strong and irrational fear of a specific object, activity, or situation. If a person were to experience a panic attack in which he suddenly experiences strong negative emotions while driving, he may learn to associate driving with the panic response. The driving has become the conditioned stimulus that now create the fear response. Classical conditioning has also been used to help explain the experience of post traumatic stress disorder. PTSD occurs when the individual develops a strong association between the situational factor that surrounded the traumatic event, for example, military uniforms, or the sounds or smell of war, and the US, the fearful trauma itself. As a result of the conditioning, being exposed to or even thinking about the situation in which the trauma occurred, the conditioned stimulus becomes sufficient to produce the conditioned response of severe anxiety. Operant conditioning. It is learning that occurs based on the consequences of the behavior and can involve the learning of new actions. Operant conditioning occurs when the dog rolls over on command because it has been praised for doing so in the past, and when a child gets good grades because his parents threaten to punish her if she doesn't. The research of Thorndike and Skinner. Psychologist Edward L. Thorndike was the first scientist to systematically study operant conditioning. In his research, Thorndike observed cats who had been placed in a puzzle box from which they tried to escape. At first, the cat scratched, bit, and sweat haphazardly without any idea of how to get out. But eventually and accidentally, they pressed the lever that opened the door and exited to the prize, a scrap of fish. The next time the cat was constrained within the box, it attempted fewer of the ineffective responses before carrying out the successful escape. And after several trials, the cat learned to almost immediately make the correct response. Observing these changes in the cat's behavior led Thorndike to develop the law of effect, the principle that response that create a typically pleasant outcome in a particular situation are more likely to create again in a similar situation, whereas responses that produce a typical unpleasant outcome are less likely to occur again in the situation. The influential behavior psychologist B.F. Skinner expanded the Thorndike idea to develop a more complex set of principles to explain operant conditioning. Skinner's created special designed environment known as operant chamber, usually called Skinner boxes, to the systematically studying the learning. A Skinner box is a structure that is big enough to fit a bird and that contains a bar or key that organism can press or pick to release food or water. It also contained a device to record the animal's response. Skinner studied in detail how animals change their behavior through reinforcement and punishment, and he helped them that explain the process of operant learning. Skinner used the term reinforcer to refer to any event that strengthen or increase the likelihood of a behavior, and the punisher to refer to any event that weakens or decreases the likelihood of a behavior. And he used the term positive or negative to refer to whether reinforcement was presented or removed respectively. Now we will discuss about the positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement strengthens a response by presenting something pleasant after response, and negative reinforcement strengthens a response by reducing or removing something unpleasant. For example, giving a child praise for completing his homework represent the positive reinforcement, whereas taking aspirin to reduce the pain of a headache represent negative reinforcement. In both the cases, the reinforcement make it more likely that behavior will occur again in the future. Punishment, on the other hand, refers to any event that weakens or reduces the likelihood of a behavior. Positive punishment weakens a response by presenting something unpleasant after the response, whereas negative punishment weakens a response by reducing or removing something pleasant. A child who is grounded after fighting with a sibling, positive punishment, and who loses out on an opportunity to go to recess after getting a poor grade is less likely to repeat these behaviors. Although the distinction between reinforcement and punishment is usually clear, in some cases it is difficult to determine whether a reinforcer is positive or negative. On a hot day, a cool breeze could be seen in a positive reinforcer because it brings in cool air, or a negative reinforcer because it removes hot air. In other cases, reinforcement can be both positive and negative. One may smoke a cigarette both because it brings pleasure, positive reinforcement, and because it eliminates the craving for nicotine, negative reinforcement also. It is also important to note that reinforcement and punishment are not simply opposites. The use of positive reinforcement in changing behavior is almost always more effective than using punishment. This is because positive reinforcement makes a person or animal feel better, helping create a positive relationship with the person providing the reinforcement. Reinforcement schedule. In continuous reinforcement schedule, the desired responses is reinforced every time it occurs. For example, whenever the dog rolls over, it gets a biscuit. Continuous reinforcement result in relatively fast learning and but also rapid extension of the desired behavior once the reinforcer disappear. Most real world reinforcers are not continuous. They occur on a partial or intermittent reinforcement schedule, a schedule in which the responses are sometimes reinforced and sometimes not. So, in comparison to continuous reinforcement, partial reinforcement schedule lead to a slower initial learning, but they also lead to a greater resistance to extension because the reinforcement does not appear after every behavior. It takes longer for the learner to determine that the reward is no longer coming, and thus extension is lower. So, example of response pattern by animal trained under different partial reinforcement schedule. Behavior can also be trained through the use of secondary reinforcer. whereas the primary reinforcer includes stimuli that are naturally preferred or enjoyed by the organism, such as food, water, and relief from pain. A secondary reinforcer, sometimes called conditioned reinforcer, is a neutral event that has become associated with the primary reinforcer through classical conditioning. An example of a secondary reinforcer would be the whistle given by an animal trainer, which has also been associated over time with the primary reinforcer, food. An example of an everyday secondary reinforcer is money. We enjoy having money not so much from the stimulus itself but rather for the primary reinforcer, the thing that money can buy with which it is associated. Learning by insight. Although classical and operant learning play a key role in learning, they constitute only a part of the total picture. One type of learning that is not determined only by conditioning occurs when we suddenly find the solution to a problem, as if the idea just popped out in our head. This type of learning is also known as insight, the sudden understanding of a solution to a problem. The German psychologist Wolfgang Kohler carefully observed what happened when he presented chimpanzees with a problem that was not easy for them to solve, such as placing food in the area that was too high in the cage to be reached. He found that the chimps first engaged in a trial and error attempt at solving problem, but when these failed, they seemed to stop and contemplate for a while. And then, after this period of contemplation, they would suddenly seem to know how to solve the problem. For instance, by using a stick to knock the food down or by standing on a chair to reach it. So Kohler argued that it was this flash of insight, not the prior trial and error approaches, which were so important for conditioning theories that allowed the animals to solve the problem. Edward Tolman studied the behavior of three groups of rats that were learning to navigate through maze. The first group always received a reward of food at the end of the maze. The second group never received any reward. At the third group received the reward but only beginning on the 11th day of experimental period. As expected, when considering the principle of conditioning, the rats in the first group quickly learned to negotiate the maze, while the rats on the second group seemed to wander aimlessly through it because they never received any reward. The rat in the third group, however, although they wandered aimlessly for the first 10 days, quickly learned to navigate to the end of the maze as soon as they received food on the day 11. By the next day, the rat in the third group had caught up in their learning to the rats that had been rewarded for the beginning. It was clear to Tolman that the rats that had been allowed to experience the maze even without any reinforcement had nevertheless learned something, and Tolman called this latent learning. Latent learning refers to the learning that is not reinforced and not demonstrated until there is motivation to do so. Tolman argued that the rats had formed a cognitive map of the maze but did not demonstrate this knowledge until they received reinforcement. Learning by observation. This kind of learning is learned by observing the behavior of others. To demonstrate that importance of observational learning in children, Bandura Ross in 1963 showed children a live image of either a man or woman interacting with a Bobo doll, a filmed version of the same events, or a cartoon version of the events. Bobo doll is an inflatable balloon with a weight of in the bottom that make it bob back up when you knock it down. In all three conditions, the model violently punched the clown, kicked the doll, sat on it, and hit it with a hammer. So the researcher first let the children view one of three type of modeling, and then let them play in the room with which there were some really fun toys. Bandura let the children play with the fun toys only for a couple of minutes before taking them away. Then Bandura gave the children a chance to play with Bobo doll. Most of the children imitated the model regardless of what type of modeling the children had seen. And regardless of the sex of the model or the child, the children who had seen the model behaved aggressively just as the model had done. They also punched, kicked, sat on the ball, and hit it with the hammer. So, Bandura and his colleagues have demonstrated that these children had learned new behavior simply by observing and imitating others. Observational learning is useful for animals and for people because it allows us to learn without having it actually engage in what might be a risky behavior. Monkeys that see other monkeys respond with fear to the sight of a snake, learn to fear the snake themselves, even if they have been raised in a laboratory and have never actually seen a snake. The prospects for human survival would be slim. Indeed, if one could learn only by suffering the consequences of trial and error. For this reason, one does not teach children to swim, adolescents to drive automobiles, and novice medical students to perform surgery by having them discover the appropriate behavior through the consequences of their successes and failure. The more costly and hazardous the possible mistake, the heavier is the reliance on observational learning from competent learner. Although modeling is normally adaptive, it can be problematic for children who grow up in violent families. These children are not only the victim of aggression, but they also see it happening to their parents and siblings. Children who witness their parents being violent or who are themselves abused are more likely as adults to inflict abuse on intimate partners or their children's. Principle of learning to understand everyday behavior. Using the principle of learning to understand everyday behavior. Operant conditioning has been used to motivate employees to improve athletic performances, to increase the functioning of those suffering from developmental disabilities, and to help parents successfully toilet train their children. Classical conditioning in advertising. The general idea is to create an advertisement that has positive features such that the the ad create enjoyment in the person exposed to it. The enjoyable ads serve as the unconditioned stimulus, and the enjoyment is the unconditioned response. Because the product being advertised is mentioned in the ad, it becomes associated with the unconditioned stimulus and then becomes the conditioned stimulus. In the end, if everything has gone well, seeing the product online or in the store then will create positive response in the buyer, leading him or her to more likely to purchase the product. A similar strategy is used by corporation that sponsor team or events. For instance, if people enjoy watching a college basketball team playing basketball, and if the team is sponsored by a product such as Pepsi, it may end up experiencing positive feelings when they view a can of Pepsi. Another type of ad that is based on principle of classical conditioning is one that associates the fear with the use of a product or behavior such as those who that show picture of daily automobile accidents to encourage seat belts use or image of lung cancer surgery to discourage smoking. These ads have also been found to be effective due in large part of conditioning. Taken together, then, there is ample evidences of utility of classical conditioning using both positive as well as the negative stimuli in advertising. Operant conditioning in classroom. Watson and Skinner believed that the learning was the result of reinforcement and thus the reinforcement could be used to educate children. Although reinforcement can be effective in education and teachers make use of it by awarding gold stars, gold grades and praise, there are also substantial limitations to using reward to improve learning. To be more effective, rewards must be contingent on appropriate behavior. In some cases, teachers may distribute rewards indiscriminately, for instance, by giving praise or good grades to children whose work does not warrant in the hope that they will feel good about themselves and in the self-esteem will lead to a better performance. Some studies indicate that, however, that high self-esteem alone does not improve academic performance. When rewards are not earned, they become meaningless and no longer provide motivation for improvement. Another potential limitations of reward is that they may teach the children that the activity should be performed for the reward rather than for one's own interest in the task. If rewards are offered too often, the task itself becomes less appealing. So summary is the Ivan Pavlov first studied the classical conditioning. Classical conditioning response show extension if the CS is repeatedly presented without US, and CR may reappear later in the process known as spontaneous recovery. So the second order conditioning occurs when a second CS is conditioned to a previously established condition stimulus. B.F. Skinner expand on Thorndike ideas to develop a set of principles to explain operant conditioning. So positive reinforcement strengthen a response presenting something pleasant after the response, and negative reinforcement strengthen a response by reducing or removing something unpleasant. Positive reinforcement weaken a response by presenting something unpleasant, and after a response, whether negative punishment weakens a response by reducing or removing something pleasant. Partial reinforcements, they are determined by whether the reward is presented on the basis of the time that elapsed between the reward or on the basis of the number of response that the organism engages, and by whether the reinforcement occurs on a regular or unpredictable schedule. Insight is a sudden understanding of the component of a problem that makes the solution apparent. Learning by observing the behavior of others and the consequences of those behaviors is known as observational learning, and aggression, altruism, and many other behaviors are learned through observation. So, this is it for the learning chapter. Thank you.